YouTube, the tier list is back, and it is here and top tier. Guys, we are back with the tier list, and we are going to be making it for the November KC Cup. This includes the new box, so you're going to get my opinion on where I think all the new box decks lie. Again, there are a few rogue decks in here that I don't have the best opinion on, so feel free to give comment on it, and you're going to see one immediately that I'm going to ask for help on. But yeah, basically tier 1 is the best deck. You expect about 30 to 40, maybe more people topping with each individual tier. Well, not maybe, about 30 people per topping with each individual tier 1 deck. Then the tier 2 decks, about maybe 10 each. So that goes about, this is out of the top 100. So you figure about 80 there, and then maybe a little bit less, maybe like 25. So that'd be 50 out of each of the tier 1s. Then the tier 2s about 10 each, so that gets you to about 75, and then 25 for everything else that gets there. So that's about right. It could alter, just giving you rough estimations. Okay, so anyway, let's start this thing off. And also, rogue means that tier 2, we expect about 10 tops, maybe per deck. Tier 3, maybe about 3 tops per deck. Rogue is, may top, maybe 1 or 2 top play it if you're really committed to the deck. Cogworthy, the deck is not really going to top, but yeah, maybe an offbeat chance it does top. And you could play it if you're really committed to it. Maybe if you play a billion games with it, you'll do well. But not really recommended, but it's, on the outside chance to top. And Sewage Waste means don't play this deck. This deck is garbage. Okay? So, Altergeist. Altergeist to me is it never leaves here. Oh, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Oh, it's over here now. It's in the rogue category. It's still a rogue deck. Crimson, please give me your analysis here. On this, please, Crimson, comment on this. I beg of you. But right now, to me, it's a rogue deck. I don't think it does enough to be, I think it struggles heavily into birds, which is one of its biggest problems to why it can't go up any further. I think it has a good matchup also into Predaplant, because it does run a lot of back row, and Pred is a matchup that does struggle with it. Hint, hint, you may see these decks on the tier list. But overall, yeah, I think it's solid. I think it's definitely a solid deck, definitely a solid rogue deck. Again, if you're really committed to it, you can do well. Just as a reference point, any of these decks, like if you're looking to get like top 500, I'm talking specifically in top 100 global when I talk about this, but if you're looking to get top 500, you can do it with any of these rogue decks. Very, very simple and easy. But yeah, Altergeist, yeah, definitely a solid deck choice at that. I think it's definitely a good rogue deck. Like I said, could do really well in the Predaplant. I'd have to see how that develops, but yeah, right now I put Altergeist in the rogue position. Ancient Warrior is out of the doo-doo spot, and it's now into actually one of the highest rogue decks, and I almost want to play it to tier 3 because I think the deck is very strong now with the new with Blue Fang. So now they can end on like 3+ disruptions turn 1, and they can actually have an okayish time going second. I still think that the deck is not super top tier, because I think there are decks that are better than it at the moment. But overall, it's very good, and definitely should be at least a very high rogue contender, or definitely in that tier 3 spot. But I could definitely see people topping with this deck now. So yeah, Ancient Warrior, definitely something to be discussed now. Okay, Blue Eyes is gosh, it's Sewage Waste. I'm sorry, Blue Eyes fans. I am so sorry. It is not good anymore. It is. Lo and behold, Blue Eyes has fallen, and it has fallen into the Sewage Waste category. I don't think this deck will do well. I don't think there's an incentive for people to play this deck. I think it kind of loses to everything. Yeah, not really good. I think Blue Eyes is just, here for the ride. More or less, it's here for the ride. Yeah, so if somebody else thinks otherwise, then please comment your opinion. Maybe at that point I'll move it up. But right now, it's not good. It's not good. Constellar is Sewage Waste. It's not good. It is not a good deck at the moment. It just doesn't do anything. It really doesn't. I mean, well, I shouldn't say it doesn't do anything. Like, it has a good turn 1. But outside of the turn 1, what are you doing? You know? I shouldn't say it doesn't do anything. That's rude. It does do things, but the turn 1 is just like, end on Pleiades. But then you realize you go up against Bird, and they're untargetable. And then you also realize that you go up against Predaplant, and they can kaiju your Pleiades. So, again, back to I almost don't do anything. So, yeah, not good. Alright, D-Hero is, again, Sewage Waste. So, there's a few decks on here. These are like, some of these decks are old, but it's not a good deck. Don't play it in the KC Cup if you want to do well. It's just not good. The bottom line is it's not good. Ending on Dystopia with a few back row is not good. It's not even reliable to end on the back row because you don't know what you're drawing into. Or if you want to play the zombie variant, there's better ways to play the zombie variant. Just play Floor. Floor is just much better than playing this. It just is. Galaxy Eyes, I think, is like a mid-rogue deck now. I think this deck is actually decent because of Infinity, and it actually gets a buff. The only problem is, again, I think the Predaplant matchup is a bit up in the air. Because once they sack your Infinity, your board's a lot more vulnerable. So, again, I don't want to say that this deck is really good yet, but it's somewhat mid-rogue. It's definitely a buff from where it was, I would say that much. Okay. So next we have Live Twin, and Live Twin is still a rogue deck. It can run the Nibiru, it can run a few other things to counter birds. It's decent enough. I would expect maybe some people to play this. I wouldn't be shocked if like one person topped with this and a ton of like hand traps, Veiler, Nibiru, whatever, and did well or whatnot. So because of that, I'll put it middle of the bottom rogue, but it's still not very good, but it could stay there. Yeah, Cosmo, come on, it's not good. It's just not good. It's still not good, and they can't leave the sewage waste department. They're still trying to figure out how to get out of sewage waste, unfortunately. But just don't play this deck if you want to do any kind of well. I mean, some of these decks in the 30 range, I don't even know if they get you to 30k. That's how bad it is. We've hit the low of the low. I mean, it's a sewage waste. It's a sewage waste. Medolce, maybe a cog meme. I mean, on the right occasion, it sacks the heck out of your opponent. Going turn 1, I don't know what you're doing. Maybe we are in sewage waste, and I'm bluffing here, and we are in sewage waste. Blue Eyes is better than you. Yeah, I can't argue this deck into a meme. It needs more support. They need more support in Duel Links. They're just not it right now. Mayakashi is, again, a cog meme. Again, I wouldn't be shocked if one person actually came on top with Maya, a Japanese player. Just steamrolls it with Maya. It always happens, so I'm never going to take it out of the cog meme position, but it's not a good deck right now. It just isn't. Ubel, oh, how should I say this? Yeah, this is how I should say this. Garbanzo beans. Again, another deck that's entered sewage waste. Really nothing to talk about here. Just, the better Super Poly deck exists right now. The much better Super Poly deck. This deck is doo-doo. Borolink is tier 2. Now, again, this is the first deck that actually has entered the tier list. So welcome on board. But Borolink is a tier 2 deck. I don't think it's tier 1. I think it drops down a tier because I think it struggles into both of the. I shouldn't say it struggles in the bird, but it's not direct counter the bird. It can beat bird, but this is a tier 2 deck because it does take a lot of skill to play this correctly. But if played correctly, it could do really well. I think it drops down a tier as well because it has a better Predaplant matchup, which you'll see when I discuss this and we'll discuss Predaplants. But for right now, I'm going to put Borolink in tier 2. S-Force is doo-doo. This deck is not good. It is not good. It is go first and hope to win, and go second, well, lose. That's pretty much it. Yeah, S-Force is not it right now. Don't play S-Force if you want to do well. Or if you want to even do decent, don't play S-Force. Shiranui is a rogue deck. I think, honestly, it might actually have a decent Predaplant matchup, so I'm going to probably put it right under Ancient Warrior, and right in the Altergeist range as actually being a really decent rogue deck. The turn 1 is still really, really good, and it does have a shot at going in turn 2, and it also does very well into birds, which is a really good reason why I want to kind of keep it here in the rogue deck. If I find that the Predaplant matchup is actually even better, then I could even see it bumping up to the edge of back end of tier 3, because I think that this deck is underrated. The amount of decks that run Dweller are kind of like less existent, and this deck could just do well into everything. So I think Shiranui is kind of like in the upper echelon of Rogue, right there with Ancient Warriors being one of the best Rogue decks right now. So with that said, I'm going to leave that there. Sky Striker to me is tier 3. I don't think it's tier 2. I don't think it has... First of all, it loses hard to Bird, which is puts it down. It's multiple tiers. Boral, it's kind of a coin flip into. And Predaplant, I'm not sure of that matchup yet, but it's not that I'm unsure of it. You need the equip to win. And if you don't have the equip, it's hard. And if you go second into Predaplant, if you go first against them, then they just kaiju you. And then it's pretty much downhill from there. So I think it's tier 3, kind of on the echelon of falling out of the tier list altogether. But it's still a good, relatively decent deck that people will talk with. So again, it's bottom tier, but I see it struggling to maintain its position, honestly. I don't think it's that great. Suship is a meme. Maybe a cog meme, because this can still end on some pretty decent boards turn 1 and can actually do some amount of disruption going second, so I'll put it here for now. I'm not going to discuss all the garbage decks too much, because there's a lot of them in a row here. Tenyi, oh man, what has happened to you? Oh, you're a cog meme now. Yeah, Tenyi's just, it's not it. I don't even know if it makes it here, but it's not it. They need a buff. TG is cog meme. I would definitely include it here. It gets a little, break boards going second. The turn 1 just loses to a kaiju, but yeah, don't play this deck if you want to do well. Trickstar is Dukas now. It doesn't do anything. It's just not good. And yeah, okay. Now let's get on to some of the newer decks. Next we have Boulder Rock. This deck is kind of okay. Again, the thing is, I kind of wear this Light Twin can lose because the Predaplants can play around IDP, and the one problem with this deck is that Kaiju, if you summon your Boulder Rock and they Kaiju it, it's kind of upsetting. Then suddenly you're at a point where you have to draw your back row, and if you don't draw you get back row, then you're probably losing the game against Predaplant. So, yeah, right now, it's here. It's not a terrible deck, but it's not a great deck either. Alright, some of these get reprinted twice, so the ones that are up, I've already discussed. I'm just going to glance right over. Agents are sewage waste. They are not good. Even the skill buff, they just don't do anything. They still don't do anything, and they don't make 2 monsters, 2 tuners, so lackluster combos. They don't have the floodgates anymore. The deck is just not good. Now, Ancient Warrior and Boral we've already discussed, so we're just going to glance over those. Bird is tier 1. It is right up there with the competition for the best deck. It is really, really strong right now because Bird just does a lot of things really well. Obviously, the turn 1 of Robin, Nightingale, and Recital is terrifying. And then they can run a lot of text. A lot of the builds play Book of Eclipse, Droplet, Mailer, Crow. There's a lot of text space, even MST. Like, the deck is just well equipped to do it and deal with any situation possible. That the deck is just like one of the best decks in the meta. And the fact that you can be untargetable, indestructible, and inkillable turn 1 is still just unbelievably frightening, and how easy they can OTK you is terrifying. So, yeah. Phenomenally is a cog meme. This deck is, well, I don't know. Yeah. I'll put it to back end of Rogue. If somebody finds an excuse to do well with this deck, ending on double VMon or VMon Dweller and some back row, then go for the moon. But deck's not very good right now, because all the decks above it are just superior, but, put it back end of here for some reason. Alright, Cyber Dragon is, it's, oh my gosh, it is to the back end of the rogue decks. I put it out of here and somewhere in here. It's not good because the problem is their turn 1 just gets destroyed by Predaplant. Like, your turn 1 is generally Vimana, a back row, if you're lucky, and Infinity. But the problem with that is, like, Predaplant just get this Kaiju and to say, well, goodbye Omni Negate. And then at that point, you're completely vulnerable to just get your board completely destroyed by them. So I think, like, at that point, it's kind of rough. And they don't have an out to bird at the moment. The plays feel a little bit lackluster and a bit behind. So that being said, I'm going to keep them here. They don't really too many great ways to fuse and summon. So at that point, I'm going to keep them at mid-rogue. I mean, the turn 1 against some decks, like ending on Infinity plus that can be quite scary. But given the way the meta shifts now, it's just not great. Dark Fluid drops down here. It's honestly, it's rogue. I'll probably put this ahead of it. I don't know. The problem with Dark Fluid is it loses terribly to Predaplant. It's the reality. Like, this deck does not beat Predaplant. Like, if you go first against Predaplant and it's the overwhelming deck, which I think will be the case of the Cup, and you get Kaiju'd on Dark Fluid for free, then you just lose the game. Like, there's no point playing anymore because that is your whole strategy and your follow-up isn't very good. So, because Predaplant exists, this deck cannot be top tier. Literally cannot be. You know, the bird matchup is a coin flip, but the Predaplant matchup is terrible. The Shadow matchup is terrible, and Dark Fluid's another coin. Rocket's another coin flip unless you're running 2 Dark Fluid, because you're gonna get extra deck sniped. So if you're on 1 Dark Fluid, then you have another reason to lose the game. So for that reason, I'm putting it in the rogue category. Okay, Dark Lord. This is hard for me to say, but it's a cog meme. It is. It's not good. I thought this deck was going to be better than it was, but the problem with Dark Lord is the turn 1 isn't that overly impressive, and again, it's another deck that really gets sacked by Predaplant and doesn't have the easiest time going into birds either, because other than Sanctified, they really don't care about anything else, and once they threaten to deal with Sanctified, then you're kind of in a bad place, per se, if that makes sense. Also, Eclipse flipping down your Dark Lords and not allowing you to copy their effects is pretty harsh. So this deck can get OTK'd very easily through Droplet or Eclipse. Or if you go up against Predaplant, they can superpower your whole board because you happen to be all Darks. So again, in a situation where you don't really have a good matchup into anything, I think this is the highest tier of Cogworthy. Someone might do really good on it, but I really just don't think the deck is that good at all. I'm sad to say. Alright. I'm saying it. Earthbound Immortal is the worst deck of the game. This deck just doesn't do anything. Even Ubel stomps this. Even Cosmo stops this. We've hit the utmost despair where this is the rat crawling sewer. Yeah. Not good. Fabled. Fabled is Alex, where are you? He's gonna cream me if I put this in the wrong spot. It's a cog meme. It's good. Like, the turn 1 is really good, and the turn 2 is not great, but it's okay-ish, I guess. But the turn 1 can be really, really strong, so I'll put this at, like, one of the highest peaks of cog meme right now. Gaia is a good rogue deck. It's a good rogue deck. Right now, Gaia is actually pretty decent because I'll put this at a Galaxy Eyes, honestly, because Gaia, the turn 1 isn't as strong, but it can play through a lot, unless you have like a really good hand where you can add a Gaia V-Mana. But you could end on, but the good thing is turn 2, you could like really extend with the skill and like get a free fusion on board. And then you can fuse from the grave as well. So like this deck is actually pretty solid. I put it as like a solid rogue deck. I wouldn't be shocked if somebody topped with this. Alright, Ghostrick. Ghostrick is top tier. Probably the highest peak of tier 3 for now. It could go up further. It might be a tier 2 deck. I don't know. But right now, I'm going to put it in a safe spot. We could end up moving it up. But it does very well in the birds. It can beat Predaplant. It may not be the most reliable Navarro. That's the only downside. And Ghostrick, I'm not sure. But right now, the deck is definitely like... I'm going to put this in tier 2. I'm going to put it in tier 2. I'm going to make a bold move. I'm going to bump this up. But I think that this is a really solid choice for the KC Cup if you're really good at Ghostrick. But keep in mind, the games can take long and the mirror might be dreadful. So that's something you may want to consider before entering the KC Cup with this. Just keep that in mind. But I think it's a really, really good deck. And it's a decently priced deck. It's not too expensive for people to get. Infernoble is a rogue deck. Again, somewhere in here. It like right now, it just, Eclipse still gives it problems. Predaplant, Kakaiju Gearfried or Kakaiju Charles, which is bad. Because, like, they don't care at that point. But, yeah. But it's still decent. Infernoble DeFleur is still decent deck at that. JVZ, please comment. And give me more info where you think they are. Magic Spectre's another cog meme. Again, just doesn't do enough. Turn 1 is just... Yeah, the going second, like, this deck doesn't really do anything. But going first is your only bet and hoping for winning. On Ice, brand new deck. I think this deck is like mid-tier rogue again, somewhere in this mix of conglomerates. But the problem is like the turn 1 is decent, and turn 2 is decent, but the deck to me just doesn't do anything really, really well. That's kind of the problem. And the skill launches, so you can't play like On Ice Magistas and try and bring that back because that's not really a thing. So yeah. Reform Mage is it's a cog meme because, like I said, the deck just doesn't do enough. It just doesn't do enough to do well. That's the bottom line. Like, it just doesn't do enough anymore. Making Dweller isn't as terrifying anymore because there's a lot of decks that just beat it. Like, if you make Dweller against Bird, they really don't have an answer, and then Bird just laughs at you because they really don't care. Boral, this deck could get sacked by Boral, so, cog worthy at this point. PK is... I'll put it here for Hunter, but I don't think the deck is very, very good. Yeah. I still think the deck struggles. It's not as terrifying of a board going first. And going second, it could break some boards, so... Like I said, maybe the bottom end of Rogue. Kind of where Quinomaly is at this point. I'd be comfortable with it. Prank Kid is not good. This is great. Actually, you can now duke it out with Fire and Ascator and the Earthbound Immortals for worst deck, because Prank Kid is right there and is just not good. They need support desperately. Give them a Yamu, help them get up the tier list. We can do it. At least to the Cogworthy. At least to the Cogworthy. Come on now. The thing too with Prank Kid is like you already have decks like Fleur that can make a full board wipe, which we will be getting to in a bit. But, yeah, overall, it just gets completely outclassed by so much. It's like, yeah, it's just not good, unfortunately. It's just not good. Yeah. Okay, next, Predaplant. This is the best deck. I'm gonna say it right now. I think that the Burnt matchup isn't as bad as people make it out to be. I think there's ways to win it. I think that Predaplant have the most insane skill in the game right now because the skill is a +2 on. Really think about it. It's almost a +3 when you give them the counter, because there's so many ways that you could abuse that counter. So, for example, you could fuse them off with Clemmy. You could tribute them with Amblo. You could, tribute them with the Kaiju in the deck, the Hydra. Like, there's so many ways to just abuse them having a counter. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think, honestly, the deck is the best deck. It does take a little bit of skill to play the deck. It's not the easiest deck to master. But once you master it and master the mirror, this deck is just so insane. I've been like 19-1 with it in COG right now. The deck is just ridiculous. It's too good at the moment, honestly. And it gives Bird, I think, the slight backseat, but I think they're both competing for best deck at the moment. Sacred Beast. Whoa, Alex, you get to read me for this one. This deck is ass. Alright, I'm gonna throw it in sewage waste. This deck is not good now. I mean, well, I can't do that because somebody might actually do well with this deck. But this deck is just not good. It doesn't do really anything that well. So, you know, alright. It's a cog meme. I'll give it cog meme status. I can't drop it that far. Alright, next. Shaddoll. Shaddoll, again, is top tier. And it's over Striker at this point. Shaddoll is very, very good. But again, top tier with an asterisk because it's pilot dependent. You have to know what you're doing and you have to do it in an orderly fashion. I still think right now in Duel Links, Shaddoll is the most difficult deck to play. It requires a very high skill level to know exactly what you're doing and to not run out of time. If you can understand that and understand all the matchups, and the deck won't have too many mirrors, so you should be good. And this deck will do you really well if you know what you're doing. But it's very good. It actually built well enough. You can beat birds pretty easily. And it actually have a decent matchup with the Predaplant. So I think this deck keeps it in the tier 3 spot. But like I said, pilot dependent. If you don't feel comfortable on some long grind out games, don't play Shaddoll. It's very pilot dependent. Gotta know what you're doing. Shark, again, is still tier 3. I think this deck is pretty solid, honestly, because it could do well into decks that, you know, struggle with Dweller, and it could still, you know, kind of OTK at some points. It can OTK at some points. So I think Shark is still like a tier 3 deck. Bottom tier 3, maybe. Could also be a rogue deck. It's kind of like on that fluctuation point. Okay, Sun Avalon is not good. It's cog worthy. By itself, I'm not talking about the floor variants. It's just, it's not very good at the moment. I don't think it does enough. True Draco is actually a decent rogue deck. I'm going to put it here, right, with Altergeist. I think that this deck is actually pretty good, but again, you need to be smart on the piloting because it's pretty moderate to difficult deck to play because you want to master getting all that advantage and trying to survive as much as possible. But I think it's actually a pretty decent rogue deck. Yeah, and I wouldn't be shocked if like 1 or 2 people top with this in the cup who are dedicated to the deck. And the fact that it's not the most expensive deck either also can attract people to playing it. Time Thief is a good rogue deck. I'm gonna put this ahead of Dark Fluid actually because the turn 1 is more reliable. Again, like I said, they both could get sacked by Predaplant, so it's kind of like they're both in the same spot at the moment. But it could go, I don't know. It kind of both in the same spot. And maybe Dark Fluid goes a bit ahead of it, honestly. Alright, Windwitch is kind of in that same spot. Mid-tier rogue deck. Like I said, I think that Windwitch is okay. It can end on Crystal Clear, and if you have a Necrofusion or a Red Rain, you could do that as well. But again, Hydra kind of hurts, and I don't think it's really insanely good, to be honest with you. Unchained is a rogue deck. It has fallen, honestly. It has fallen. Because Unchained just... it loses to Bird, and it loses to Predaplant. And once you lose to the top 2 decks, the 2 tier 1 decks, you're going to fall down into the rogue. And that's exactly what happened. And it's just, at this point, you know, not great. Shark at least could take out Birds pretty consistently. But this deck just loses to Bird. Loses to, it loses to Bird and it loses to Predaplant. So I would put it at rogue right now. Seraph is in the rogues category. Probably, I don't even know if it's in the rogue category. Like, I haven't seen this deck get any more play. Probably bottom rogue. Maybe somebody plays it, but again, not really that great, honestly, anymore. It just not really great in anything. And I'm going to put both variants of floor to end it off simultaneously. I'm going to put this here. So again, Dogmatic of the Floor is the best variant right now walking around because this deck can really have a ton of tech room for birds. That's what you're going to see. And also Sog, this is just like other variants like the TD variant or whatever. I think they kind of take a backseat. I think there's going to be a decent amount of decks running Veiler and Crow in this meta, especially Birds, and they'll be able to Crow to stop your combo. So, you know, with that being said, I think that the other variants take the back seat, but Dogmatica De Fleur is still really good. It's tier 2 deck, and Preda can break it, but yeah, overall, yeah. I think still Dogmatica De Fleur is very good. This is where I think everything is, honestly. I think that this is where I would rank everything. If again, Steven, if you want to comment more on Ghostrick, please feel free. Crimson, if you want to comment more on Alter, guys, please feel free. Or anybody wants to comment on anything, please do. Feel free. But this is where I think the tier list is right now. And yeah, I appreciate it. If you like this video, like, comment, sub. And yeah, please do. And next, we're going to be doing day 1 with Predaplant the Cog. And yeah, I appreciate your time. And take care, YouTube. Bye-bye.